My name is Catherine Hayes, and I am 32 years old. I am the CEO of Summit Wellness, the pharmaceutical empire my mother built from the ground up. To the outside world, I had everything: money, status, a stunning penthouse overlooking the East River, and a marriage that everyone called picture perfect. My husband, David Miller, was the company's chief operating officer, a man who always appeared in public with impeccable poise and composure. We had been married for 5 years. In those 5 years, I believed I knew the man who slept beside me every night. It wasn't until the 27th day of his business trip to Miami that I realized what I knew was merely a meticulously polished veneer. I was in Miami for an urgent meeting with our partners in the Southeast. I had initially planned to send a subordinate, but a nameless, gnawing anxiety had clung to me all afternoon. During the 27 days David was away, he called me regularly. He complained of exhaustion, of pressure, of how much he missed my home-cooked meals. Every night, he described his back-to-back meeting schedule, saying he just wanted to wrap things up and come home. I used to melt at those words. I even arranged for gourmet meal kits to be sent directly to his hotel to keep his strength up. Thinking back on it now, a chill runs down my spine. The night I arrived, a light rain was falling, making the bright lobby of the Grand Hotel gleam. I pulled my suitcase through the revolving doors, my head down as I searched for my ID in my handbag. Just then, a flash of charcoal gray crossed the edge of my vision. I looked up. David was standing less than 30 feet away, wearing the bespoke suit I'd had tailored for him. The navy blue tie was the one I had knotted for him the morning he left. But it wasn't the suit that made me freeze. What turned the blood in my veins to ice was the hand he had resting on a young woman's shoulder. His fingertips gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. The girl wore a cream-colored sweater. Her face was small and delicate, her eyes dewy as if she had just been thoroughly pampered. She leaned into him, practically melting against his chest. David bent down, touched the bridge of her nose with his fingertip, and smiled softly. "Be a good girl now. As soon as we're checked in, I'll take you for that seafood dinner. Don't be upset anymore." I heard every word, so clearly that a sharp pain, like a needle to the heart, shot through my chest. For 27 days, he'd claimed he was too busy to even sleep properly. Yet here he was, with enough time to escort his mistress to a luxury hotel, cooing and coddling her with the promise of a romantic dinner. I thought I would tremble, that I would storm over and shatter that sickeningly sweet, fake facade. But no. The more it hurt, the clearer my mind became. Anger would only make me lose my advantage. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and clicked forward on my stilettos. When I spoke, my voice was softer than usual. David flinched as if struck. He spun around, his tender expression instantly freezing over. His pupils contracted, his lips parted, but no sound came out. The girl beside him also froze, looking at me with an expression that was both wary and curious. Catherine? When did you get here?" I smiled. "I just arrived. What a coincidence. Even on a business trip, you managed to create such surprises." I shifted my gaze to the girl. She looked about 6 years younger than me. I guessed she had no idea who she was standing in front of. I took another step forward, and naturally linked my arm through my husband's. His arm was as stiff as a block of wood. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" David remained silent. I let out a light laugh and turned to the girl, extending my hand like a polite younger sister. "Hi, I'm Catherine, David's little sister. You must be my future sister-in-law, right?" I watched David's face turn from white to a sickly green. The girl, initially bewildered, saw her eyes light up with relief. She quickly took my hand. Her palm was cool. "Oh, so you're David's sister. I'm Jessica. David's mentioned you." "He's mentioned me? Really?" I figured you thought my brother was so busy with work. I'm surprised he had time to talk about his family." David finally found his voice. He forced a laugh. Yeah, that's right. This is Jessica, my girlfriend." Those 2 words hit my ears colder than the rain outside. This man, with his own mouth, had just written me out of our 5-year marriage, turning me into his sister to salvage his affair. But the more it hurt, the clearer I became. A sharp, cold thought formed in my mind. "Fine. If you want to put on a show, I'll be the one to rewrite the entire play." I squeezed David's arm gently, feeling the cold sweat forming in his palm. "You're so secretive. hiding a beautiful girlfriend like Jessica from the family. If I hadn't run into you here, I probably wouldn't have known for ages." Jessica blushed, glancing at David with a smug look. Just one glance told me everything. She believed him. I looked at the key card in David's hand. The presidential suite, top floor. How fitting for an affair financed by his wife's money. "This is perfect. I haven't had dinner yet either. If you two don't mind, could I tag along? We can consider it my official meeting with my new sister-in-law." I finished and looked directly into my husband's eyes. That was the first moment of the night I saw fear in them. He swallowed hard, his lips moving, but before he could refuse, Jessica chimed in with a smile. "Of course you can. I'd love to get closer to David's family." Family. The word was so absurd it tasted like ash in my mouth. This woman had no idea she was cheerfully calling her lover's legal wife her sister-in-law to be, and that man was now too scared to even look me in the eye. I nodded, my smile unwavering. "That's wonderful. I'm sure tonight will be a lot of fun." No one knew that in that instant, a door in my mind had closed, and another colder, sharper, and far more ruthless had just swung open. I followed them out of the hotel. The Miami sea breeze blew coldly through the grand lobby, but inside my chest, there was only a dry, hard emptiness. David walked on the left, Jessica clinging to his arm. I walked on the right, half a step behind, the perfect picture of a little sister who had stumbled upon her brother during a business trip. Only I knew that what lay between us wasn't a dinner, but a chessboard that had just been set. The car took us to a seafood restaurant on the Miami River. The place was elegant enough for business clients and private enough for people hiding secrets. I walked in first, then turned to smile at my husband's mistress. "Jessica, would you like to sit by the window? The view of the river is beautiful from there." Jessica nodded. "You're so sweet. I thought David's family would be hard to get to know." I pulled out a chair for her. "No one in my family is difficult. As long as David is happy, we'll all try to respect his choices." I emphasized the word, choices. David, who was taking off his suit jacket, froze mid-motion. He looked up at me, his eyes wavering. I didn't look away, just calmly met his gaze as the waiter brought the menus. Jessica began to chat naturally, as if she were getting acquainted with her future sister-in-law. She said she worked in the marketing department of a cosmetics brand and had met David during a collaboration. She'd been drawn to him because he was mature and caring. Every word she spoke was like a knife scraping against my skin. So, my husband had constructed an entirely different persona for her. Every cheating man is the same. He always plays the victim before turning two women into fools. "Can you eat spicy food?" Jessica tilted her head and asked me. "I can," I smiled. "But David can't handle it at all. When we were kids, I used to sneak chili flakes into his bowl. One bite and his ears would turn bright red. David nearly dropped his glass of water. I knew he understood that I was deliberately adding layers to my role as the little sister." Jessica laughed. "He never told me any stories from his childhood." David pursed his lips. "It's old stuff, nothing worth telling." I rested my chin on my hand, looking at him as if he were a stranger. "That's true. A lot of old stories don't seem worth telling, but they can be very interesting when they finally come to light." The atmosphere at the table grew noticeably tense. I held David's gaze for a beat, then looked away. I didn't want to spook her yet. Prey only runs deeper into the trap when it thinks it's heading for a meadow. The food arrived, one dish after another. All the same dishes I used to order when I traveled with my husband on business. I sat quietly, watching Jessica's hands peel shrimp for David, place fish in his bowl, and remind him to eat slowly to avoid a stomachache. I had done those exact same things for 5 years. "David told me you two have been together for almost 3 years, is that right?" I asked, swirling my lemonade. Jessica blushed slightly. "Yes, almost 3 years." 3 years? I repeated slowly. "That's a long time. My brother is really good at keeping secrets." David slammed his chopsticks down. "Catherine, eat your food. You're talking too much." I turned and smiled sweetly. "I'm just happy for you. You've met someone who makes you so happy you've completely changed. It's only natural for me to be a little chatty." Jessica looked at me, her eyes becoming more probing, but David immediately poured her some water, his tenderness so fake it was sickening. "You should eat. Don't let it get cold." I silently observed his every gesture. The man before me had once promised to never be unfaithful, and now he was using that same old tenderness to court another woman. A wave of nausea rose in my throat. I looked at the traffic outside the window and said softly, "David, Mom called me this afternoon." David's hand tightened. "What did she say?" "She said she misses you, and she asked when you're coming back so we can discuss adjusting the list of beneficiaries for the family trust." I saw his eyes darken. This was the first real strike at his deepest fear. Money, shares, inheritance, his position in the company, those were David Miller's weakest nerves. Jessica asked quietly, "What's a family trust?" I turned to her. "It's a joint asset pool managed by my mother. Since our family is in business, it's very important. Who gets to be a beneficiary and who doesn't is sometimes based not on blood, but on whether they live a life worthy of it." David's voice was cold. "That's enough." I tilted my head. "Why is it enough?" "I'm just telling Jessica about our family. Who knows, she might have to get used to a lot more things in the future." That comment made Jessica lower her head slightly, but the corners of her lips couldn't hide a look of delight. She thought she was getting closer to a door of immense wealth. I stood up and raised my glass of water. "Well, let's consider it fate that we met tonight. I'd like to propose a toast." I smiled and continued, "Here's to those who think they hold happiness in their hands. May they have the strength to hold on to it until the end." Jessica clinked her glass with mine. "Thank you. I believe I can." I looked directly into her eyes. "I hope so too." Dinner ended around 10 p.m. As we reached the restaurant exit, David said he would take Jessica up to her room first and then come back to talk to me. But just as he turned his back, I stepped forward and snatched the key card he hadn't yet put away. "Oh good, I'm on the same floor. Let's just go up together, it's more convenient. I have something urgent about the company I need to ask you right now." David froze. Jessica looked from one of us to the other, bewildered. I kept smiling. Tonight, I would step into that room, and from that moment on, neither of them would have a way back. I followed them into the elevator, my heart so calm it surprised even me. The room key in my hand was cold and hard, a confirmation that from this point forward, it was no longer suspicion but solid proof. David stood in front, his back straight but his shoulders tense. Jessica stood close beside him, her hand still linked through his arm as if afraid to let go and lose her place. I stood behind them, watching their reflection in the polished elevator doors. It felt like a scene from a movie, only this time, I was no longer a spectator. The elevator stopped on the 23rd floor. As the doors opened, I stepped out first and turned to look at them. "David, which way is our room?" Before David could answer, Jessica pointed to the right. "This way." I nodded. "Ah, right. My room is in this section too." David turned to look at me. "You're really staying here?" I smiled faintly. "Did you think I was joking?" The hallway was carpeted, muffling our footsteps. I could hear my own heartbeat, not out of pain, but out of calculation. The presidential suite was at the end of the hall. When David held the key card to the scanner, his hand trembled so visibly I could see it. The door opened to a wide, bright space, a room large enough for 3 people to stand in and still feel distant from one another. I walked in first, set my bag on a table and turned around. "Make yourselves comfortable. I just need to ask David a few things about work." Jessica hesitated. "Maybe I should wait outside." I shook my head. "No need. We're all family here." The word family made David clench his fists. I knew he was trying to guess my next move. I sat on the sofa and looked around. On the coffee table were 2 half-empty glasses of wine. Draped over a chair was a woman's white coat. I recognized the scent of a strange perfume in the air. It wasn't mine. "David," I called. "Yes?" His voice was hoarse. "The project files for the new pharmaceutical plant in Austin. Did you bring them?" David paused. "Yes, I did." I nodded. "Good. I need to review some of the figures tomorrow." Jessica looked at us. "Are you two always this serious about work?" I smiled. "Our family has been in business for a long time. Work always has to be clear-cut." I looked at David. "Get your laptop out." David didn't move. I didn't bring it." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't bring it?" He avoided my gaze. "I left it at the office." I stared at him. "That's odd. Just yesterday you told me you had to bring it with you to revise the report." The air in the room grew heavy. Jessica started looking back and forth between us. Maybe you can do it tomorrow, she suggested quietly. I turned to her and smiled. You're right. We can do it tomorrow. I stood up and walked slowly to the large window overlooking the city. The streetlights stretched out like a river of gold. I spoke softly. David. He remained silent for a few seconds before answering. What is it? Do you remember our wedding day? He didn't answer. That day, you said something to me. I turned back to face him, looking directly into his eyes. You said you would never do anything to embarrass me. Jessica stood as still as a statue. David stepped closer to me. Catherine, don't talk about this now. I laughed. I'm just having a family chat. You said I'm your sister, remember? I turned to Jessica. Then, there's something you probably don't know. She looked at me. What is it? I held her gaze for a long moment before speaking slowly. I am the majority shareholder of the company David runs. She blinked. What? I continued. And that company is my family's asset. David hissed. That's enough, Catherine. I turned to him. What are you afraid of? He didn't answer. I looked back at Jessica. Did you know? 3 years ago, when you met David, he had just been promoted to COO by my family. Jessica took a step back. He told me he built his career all by himself. I smiled. He's very good at what he does. So good that he made 2 women believe 2 completely different stories. David grabbed my wrist. You've said enough. I pulled my hand away. Don't touch me. My voice wasn't loud, but it was cold. You're the one who cast me as the little sister. Jessica turned to him. David, what is going on? David was speechless. I sat back down on the sofa. Jessica, I said, and she looked at me. Let me ask you one honest question. Okay. You've known David for 3 years. Yes. In those 3 years, did he ever take you home to meet his mother? She was silent. Did he ever talk about marriage? She looked down. He said he was waiting for his career to be more stable. I nodded. More stable. How much longer was he planning to wait? David's voice was a low growl. Catherine, stop it. I looked at him. Are you afraid of Jessica knowing the truth? Jessica turned to him. Tell me. David took a sharp breath. This isn't what you think, Jessica. I laughed. Then what is it? The room fell so silent I could hear the hum of the air conditioner. I knew I didn't need to reveal my whole hand just yet. A panicked man will expose more of himself when trapped in silence. I stood up and grabbed my handbag. Well, I'm heading back to my room. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and David? He looked at me. Tomorrow, I'm going to be auditing the Austin project account. His voice hitched. Why? I smiled. Because I've noticed a few unusual expenses. Jessica looked at him. What kind of expenses? David didn't answer. I opened the door. Good night, you two. I stepped into the hallway, the door closing behind me. For the first time, I no longer felt like a betrayed wife. I was the one holding the reins of this entire story. And starting tomorrow, I would begin to tighten them, one by one. I didn't go back to my room right away. I stood at the end of the 23rd floor hallway, looking out the large window. The city of Miami was a dazzling spectacle at night, but my heart grew darker with each passing moment. It wasn't because of the pain anymore, but because I could see the path ahead with stark clarity. A dead marriage can't be saved, but a betrayal must be paid for. I took out my phone and called Mark Chen, the head of our corporate legal department. Mark, can you get on a flight to Miami tomorrow morning? I need your help with something. On the other end, Mark sounded surprised. What's so urgent, Catherine? I need a full audit of the Austin plant project's cash flow for the last 3 months. Pay special attention to David's personal expense accounts. Mark paused for a beat. Is there a problem? I haven't drawn any conclusions yet, but I don't like the feeling of being kept in the dark. I understand. I'll be on the first flight out. Thank you, Mark. I hung up, stood there for another moment, and then walked back to my room, which I had intentionally booked just a few doors down from theirs. I wanted to be close enough to hear their footsteps as they passed my door. Inside my own clean, cold, and impersonal room, I set down my bag and took off my shoes. My feet ached from a long day, but my mind was unusually sharp. I sat down and opened my laptop, logging into the company's internal financial management system. I examined every transaction related to the Austin project, At first glance, everything seemed normal, but a closer look revealed several unauthorized expenditures. $50,000 transferred to a PR firm in New York. $75,000 wired to a personal account under the name Jessica Thorne. Another $125,000 moved through an intermediary and then withdrawn as cash. I stared at the screen. It was no longer a suspicion. This was evidence. David wasn't just having an affair, he was using company money to fund it. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. 5 years ago, when we got married, I thought that as long as we trusted each other, everything would be fine. I was the one who signed off on his promotion to COO. I had believed he was the man who could share the weight of my family's legacy with me. It turned out I had been sheltering a wolf in my own home. My phone vibrated. The screen showed David. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. "Where are you?" "In my room. Can I come over and talk?" "It's not a good time." He paused. "Catherine, I need to explain." "You already did. I'm your little sister." The line went silent. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then what did you mean?" He sighed. "I'm sorry." Those 2 words came far too late. I looked out the window. "Which part are you sorry for?" He couldn't continue. I gave a humorless laugh. "Go to sleep. You have a meeting tomorrow." I hung up before he could say anything else. I didn't want apologies. I wanted the truth. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't open it. David's voice came from the other side. "Catherine." I remained silent. "I know you're not asleep." I stayed quiet. He stood outside for a few more minutes before his footsteps faded down the hall. I didn't open the door, not because I was weak, but because I no longer wanted to hear a single one of his explanations. I opened my laptop again, this time checking the statements for the supplementary corporate card David was using. In the last 3 months, his spending on luxury goods had quadrupled. I opened each receipt: a handbag for over $5,000, a watch for nearly $10,000, an evening gown for $4,000. The recipient on the delivery slips: Jessica Thorne. I laughed, a silent, bitter laugh. A man using his wife's money to spoil his mistress, and he had the audacity to paint himself as the victim in our marriage. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I would begin the second phase. I opened my contacts and called my mother. "You're still awake?" "I am." "You're in Miami, aren't you?" "Yes." Her voice grew serious. "Have you seen him?" "Yes, I have." A few seconds of silence. "What are you going to do?" "I want to revoke David's access to the project accounts." My mother asked immediately, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mom." She sighed. "Then do it. Our family doesn't keep traitors." I gripped the phone tighter. "Okay. But Catherine," she added, "remember to stay calm. Don't do anything that will put you at a disadvantage." "I know." After hanging up, for the first time that night, I felt a little lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because I knew I wasn't fighting this battle alone. I stood up and walked out onto the balcony. The sea breeze was strong. I looked down at the street below. Cars were still moving. People were still walking. Life went on. Only my marriage had come to a halt. I went back inside and took a small voice recorder from my bag, a device I always carried on business trips. Tonight, I would start collecting everything. Tomorrow, everything would change. And this time, I would be the one to decide how this story ends. The next morning, I woke very early. The first light of the Miami sun slanted through the curtains, bathing the room in a pale yellow glow. I stood before the mirror for a long time. The person looking back was still me, but her eyes were different. They were no longer the eyes of a wife waiting for her husband to return from a long trip. They were the eyes of someone preparing for a cleansing. I changed into a beige power suit, tied my hair back neatly, and went down to the hotel lobby. Mark Chen was already waiting at a coffee table near the window. "You're early," I said. He gave a small smile. "I'm used to it. When you call, I know it's serious." I sat down across from him. "I need you to audit every transaction related to the Austin project from the last 3 months, with special attention to David's personal and corporate accounts." Mark nodded. "I already took a preliminary look on the flight over. There are signs of improper withdrawals." "How much?" "Around $250,000. I was silent for a moment. The number wasn't catastrophic for the corporation, But it was enough to confirm one thing. David was no longer on my side. Mark lowered his voice. There's also one account that received multiple payments. The recipient's name is Jessica Thorne. I took a sip of coffee. I figured as much. Mark looked at me. How do you want to handle this? I'm not going public with it yet. I need more evidence. He nodded. I'll support you. I stood up. I have one more thing to do this morning. What's that? Mark asked. I'm going to see Jessica. Mark was slightly taken aback. Why are you meeting her? I smiled. To help her understand her true position. I went back to the elevator and up to the 23rd floor. The hallway was as quiet as the night before. I stood before the door to the presidential suite for a few seconds, then knocked lightly. The door opened. Jessica stood there in a cream-colored silk nightgown, her hair down, her face still sleepy, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. You're here early. I smiled. I came to invite you to breakfast. She turned inside. David's still in the shower. Come in and sit down. I entered. The room still smelled of her perfume from the night before. I sat on the sofa. Did you sleep well? Fairly well. It's been a while since I've traveled this far. I glanced around. David takes good care of you. Jessica blushed. He loves me very much. I tilted my head. Do you know how much money he spends on you each month? She froze. What do you mean? I opened my bag and took out a printed copy of the bank statements. Take a look. Jessica took the papers, her face growing paler as she read. How? How do you have this? Because it's money from my family's company. She stammered. David said this was his personal money. I smiled faintly. He really told you that? She didn't answer. I continued. In the last 3 months, he's transferred over $150,000 to you. Jessica took a step back. What are you talking about? I placed the papers on the table. I'm talking about the truth. Just then, the bathroom door opened. David walked out, his hair still wet. Catherine. His voice was filled with panic. What are you doing here? I looked at him. Just showing Jessica a few numbers. He strode over. What did you show her? The wire transfer records, I said calmly. He snatched the papers from her hand. Are you crazy? I looked him straight in the eye. You're the one who's crazy, using company funds to support your mistress. Jessica turned to him. Tell me it's not true. David was silent. You told me this was your own money? He stammered. I stood up. All right. I don't want to make things awkward for you. I turned to Jessica. Jessica, if you truly care about him, you should know exactly where he stands. Her voice trembled. What do you mean? I spoke slowly. If he loses his position as COO, loses access to corporate accounts, loses his inheritance from my family's estate, would you still want to be with him? David's voice was a low growl. Catherine, that's enough. I turned to him. Are you scared? He didn't answer. Jessica stared at him for a long time. Tell me. David turned away. I smiled faintly. It's okay. It was just a question. I walked to the door. Oh, by the way. I turned back. David, you should prepare yourself. He clenched his fists. Prepare for what? I smiled. To return everything that never belonged to you in the first place. I walked out of the room, the door closing behind me. I knew that from this moment on, everything had begun to crumble, and I would be the one to make it fall faster. I left the presidential suite with the same steady steps I'd had walking in, but it wasn't until the elevator doors closed that I finally let out a long, slow breath. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't in pain. The only thing left inside me was the crystal-clear realization that I had seen the absolute bottom of my marriage. And when you've seen the bottom, you no longer fear the fall. I went down to the hotel lobby and sat at the same coffee table from earlier. Mark was still waiting. When he saw me approach, one look was all it took for him to understand that things had progressed. Is it done? I nodded. The first step is done. He asked quietly. Does she know? She knows. How did she react? She doesn't fully grasp the situation yet, but it's enough to make her start doubting. Mark grew thoughtful. So, what's your next step? I opened my bag, took out the small voice recorder, and placed it on the table. I recorded something last night. He looked at me. What is it? A phone conversation between David and someone named Thompson. Mark understood immediately. The competitor in the bidding war. I nodded. Highly likely. Mark's breath caught. If that's true, then this isn't just a family matter anymore. I looked him straight in the eye. That's what I was thinking. He asked, "Have you listened to the whole thing?" "Not yet. I saved it to listen with you this morning." I pressed play. David's voice came through, sharp and clear. "I already told you. The cost estimate I sent is as close as it gets. If your side raises the bid by another 2%, I guarantee our proposal will be adjusted to be less favorable." Another man's voice replied, "As long as you're sure, the percentage isn't an issue." I stopped the recording. Mark was silent for a few seconds. "That's all we need." I nodded. Enough to fire him, enough to sue him, enough to end everything. Mark looked at me for a long time. "You still need to prepare yourself, Catherine." "For what?" "For him to come back begging for your forgiveness." I gave a faint smile. "I don't need to prepare for that. He won't get the chance." Mark nodded. "Then I'll start drafting the paperwork." I stood up. "I need you to do one more thing for me." "What is it?" "Temporarily freeze his access to the Austin Project's accounts." He confirmed. "Effective today?" "Effective right now." Mark met my gaze for a second, then nodded. "Done." I turned to head back to my room, but I'd only taken a few steps when my phone rang. It was David. I answered. "Where are you?" "In the lobby." "I'm coming down right now. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." His voice grew harsh. "Catherine, this isn't what you think." I stopped walking. "Then, what is it?" He was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. I was pressured into it. I burst out laughing. "Who pressured you to wire money to Jessica? Who pressured you to send bidding documents to a competitor? Who pressured you to tell everyone I was your sister?" He couldn't answer. I continued. "Come down to the lobby." He sounded surprised. "Why?" "I want to settle this once and for all." 10 minutes later, David appeared. He was wearing a white dress shirt, his hair still damp, his face visibly pale. The man who had once exuded confidence in every board meeting now looked like someone who had just lost everything. He sat down in front of me. "Catherine, go on." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "I'm sorry." I remained silent. He continued. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I asked, "You didn't mean to have an affair? You didn't mean to embezzle company funds? Or you didn't mean to sell our bidding documents?" He looked down. "I just wanted a little money of my own." I stared at him for a long time. "A little?" He spoke quietly. "I wanted to feel like I was in control." I laughed. "You wanted to feel in control? With my family's money?" He said nothing. I leaned forward. "David," I said, and he looked at me. "Do you remember the day you proposed to me?" He nodded. "What did you say that day?" He was silent. "You said you wanted to build a future with me," I said slowly. "But it seems you built that future with someone else." He clenched his fists. "I was wrong." I nodded. "Yes, you were." I stood up. "The board of directors is having an emergency virtual meeting this afternoon." He looked up. "A meeting for what?" "To announce the temporary suspension of your duties." He shot to his feet. "You can't do that." I looked at him. "I can." He took a step forward. "I'm your husband." I smiled. "You're just now remembering that you're my husband?" "Yesterday you introduced me as your sister." He froze. I went on. "You have no way back from this." I turned and walked out of the hotel lobby. The midday sun beat down on the pavement. I stood there for a moment, then called my assistant. "Prepare the virtual conference room." "Yes, Miss Hayes." "Notify all members of the board of directors." "Yes, ma'am." "And send an invitation to Mr. Miller." "Understood." I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt I was standing exactly where I was supposed to be. Not as a wife, but as a leader. And starting this afternoon, everything would change completely. That afternoon, I didn't go back to my room. Instead, I set up in the hotel's temporary business center. I was accustomed to handling crises at various levels within the corporation, but this was the first time I had to manage one that was simultaneously a family matter and a severe legal issue. I opened my laptop, logged into our internal system, and reviewed the entire agenda for the virtual board meeting. My assistant had sent out all the invitations. David Miller's name was third on the list of attendees. I stared at that name for a long time. A name that had once brought me a sense of security, A name I believed I could lean on had now become a name that needed to be purged from the system. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Are you ready?" "Yes, Mom." She asked slowly. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" "Yes, I'm sure." My mother was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then I'll join the meeting with you." I nodded, even though I knew she couldn't see me. "Okay." After hanging up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not because the pain had lessened, but because I knew I wouldn't be facing this decision alone. I had once thought that if David had never entered my life, perhaps I would have never understood what it felt like to misplace my trust. But now, I saw something else more clearly. The higher you stand, the more decisive you must be. 15 minutes before the meeting, David appeared at the door of the business center. He didn't knock, just stood there, looking at me through the glass. His expression reminded me of years ago when he was just a project manager, always looking diligent and ambitious. But now, all that was left in his eyes was panic. He walked in. "Catherine!" I didn't stand up. "Have a seat." He didn't sit. "You still have a chance to stop this." I looked at him. "Stop what?" He spoke quickly. "The board meeting." I asked, "Why should I stop it?" He clenched his fists. "I'll fix everything." I shook my head. "You've had 3 years to fix it. We both know how that turned out." He fell silent. I continued. "Do you remember the day you were appointed COO?" He nodded very slowly. "What did you say to me that day?" He didn't answer. "You said you would never do anything to harm the company's interests." He looked down. "I was wrong," I said softly. "When you're wrong, you have to face the consequences." He stepped closer. "Give me more time." I looked at him. "You've already had 3 years." His voice cracked. "I'm begging you." I stood up. "David." He looked at me. "Don't beg me anymore." He asked quietly, "Then what do you want?" I answered directly. "I want the truth to be brought to light." He said no more. I saw a slow, crumbling defeat in his eyes, but I no longer felt any pity. When a man uses his wife's money to support another woman and leverages company assets for personal gain, he has chosen his own path. The meeting started at exactly 3 p.m. I sat before the screen as the board members appeared one by one. My mother was in the central frame. Mark was on her right, David on her left. The virtual room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. My mother spoke first. "We are holding this emergency meeting today to address some issues concerning the Austin project." I opened my files. "I'd like to present." My mother nodded. "Go ahead, Catherine." I shared my screen, displaying the bank statements. Over the last 3 months, there have been numerous unauthorized transfers from the project account. A board member asked, "Who authorized these transfers?" I replied, "Coup David Miller." The atmosphere immediately grew heavy. David looked at me, his expression no longer pleading, but one of utter despair. Mark added, "Furthermore, we have evidence of him sharing confidential bidding information with a competitor." Another member asked, "Has this been verified?" Mark stated clearly, "We have a recording." My mother looked at David. "Explain yourself." David was silent for a long time before he finally said, "I was wrong." Just 3 words, but they were enough. I looked at him, the man who had stood beside me at our wedding, now bowing his head before a screen like an employee who had made a grave mistake. I felt no satisfaction, only a sense that things were ending exactly as they should. My mother spoke again. Effective immediately, David Miller is suspended from his position as Chief Operating Officer. No one objected. I closed my files. The meeting was over in 15 minutes. The screen went black. The room returned to silence. David remained seated. He didn't get up right away. I knew this moment was harder for him than any reprimand could ever be. Losing his position meant losing everything. He stood up very slowly. "Catherine." I looked at him. He spoke quietly. "I never thought it would come to this." I replied, "I did." He asked, "So what are you going to do now?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Whatever needs to be done next." He didn't ask any more questions. He turned and walked out of the room. For the first time in the 5 years I had known him, his back seemed small. I stood alone in the business center. Outside the window, the sky was beginning to turn orange. The afternoon sun cast long, thin lines across the floor like cuts. I knew this battle was only half won, but at least from now on I was back in control. And this time, I wouldn't stop until everything was put back in its rightful place. After the board meeting ended, I didn't immediately go back to my room. I lingered in the business center, staring at the blank screen, my mind still replaying the voices of each participant. Everything had happened faster than I'd expected. In just 15 minutes, David had lost his position as COO. In just 15 minutes, our 5-year marriage had officially transitioned from cracked to shattered. I gathered my documents and left the conference area. As I stepped into the hallway, I saw David still standing at the far end. He hadn't left as I'd thought. He was leaning against the wall, his hands hanging limply at his sides. The look in his eyes when he saw me was no longer anger or panic, but that of someone who had just woken up from a long dream. "You waited for me?" He nodded. "I wanted to talk for a minute." I glanced at my watch. "Make it quick." He walked closer. "I didn't think you'd do it so fast," I replied bluntly. I was 3 years too slow. He looked down. "I thought you would at least let me save face." I looked at him. "Did you let me save face? Did you preserve the dignity of my family? Did you even preserve your own?" He remained silent. I spoke slowly. "Did you preserve your own dignity, David?" He sighed. I was wrong. I looked at him for a long moment. I had once hoped for the day he would understand his mistake. But now that it was here, I didn't feel the relief I had imagined. Perhaps it was because I had moved far beyond the point where an apology still held any meaning. My phone rang. It was Jessica. I glanced at the screen for a second before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was trembling. "Where are you?" "At the hotel. I need to see you." I looked at David. He was watching me. "Fine. Come down to the lobby." I hung up. David asked, "Was that her?" "Yes." He spoke quietly. "What are you going to tell her?" I looked at him. "The truth." He said nothing more. We went down to the lobby together. Jessica was already there, her face stripped of the flawless makeup from the night before, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, she rushed over. "You have to tell me," she said. "Tell you what?" I asked. "Did David lose his job because of you?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Not because of me, because of himself." She shook her head. "That's impossible." I spoke slowly. "In the last 3 years, did you ever once ask him where the money came from? Did you ever ask why he never took you to meet his family? Did you ever wonder why he always said he needed to wait a little longer?" Her voice trembled. "He said he was trying." I looked at her. Oh, he was trying all right. He was trying to maintain 2 separate lives at the same time. David stood behind me, silent. I continued. "Jessica." She looked up. "Did you know he was married?" She froze. "Married?" I held her gaze and enunciated each word clearly. "He's been married to me for 5 years." She staggered back a step. "No, that can't be." I turned to David. "Tell her." David was speechless. Jessica looked at him. "Tell me." He remained silent, and tears began to stream down her face. "You told me you'd never been married." No one answered. I stood there and watched her cry. I felt no triumph, only the sight of a woman waking up from a mistaken dream, just as I once had. I said softly, "You weren't the only one he lied to." She looked at me. "When did you find out?" "The night before last." Her voice caught. "And you still called me your sister-in-law?" I nodded. "Because at that moment, I needed you to believe me." She stared at me, her expression shifting from confusion to anger, and from anger to pain. David took a step forward. "Jessica." She recoiled. "Don't you dare call me that." He said quietly, "I'm sorry." She laughed through her tears. "Are you sorry to me, or are you sorry to her?" He couldn't answer. I looked at them for a moment, then turned to Jessica. "Jessica," I said, and she looked at me. "You need to protect yourself now," she asked. "Protect myself from what?" I spoke slowly. "The money he transferred to you was company money. If this investigation goes deeper, you could be implicated." Her face went white. I didn't know." I nodded. "I believe you." David stepped forward. "Catherine," he said, looking at me, "are you really going to take it that far?" I replied, "You're the one who took it this far first." He couldn't say another word. Jessica gave us one last look, then turned and fled. Her figure disappeared through the hotel's glass doors. I knew that from this moment on there was truly no going back. I stood still for a long time. The city outside was as bustling as ever, as if nothing had happened. But for me, a chapter of my life had closed, and there was still so much left to do. After Jessica left the lobby, David and I stood facing each other in a long, drawn-out silence. The ambient noise of the hotel guests checking in, porters pulling luggage, tourists chatting continued around us, but a vast, quiet space existed only between us. My heart beat slowly and steadily, no longer with anger or pain, just a bone-deep coldness. David was the first to speak. "Catherine," I looked at him. "What is it?" He heaved a deep sigh. "I never thought things would end up like this." I asked, "How did you think they would end up?" He hesitated. "I thought you'd just be angry for a while." I laughed. "Who did you think I was?" He couldn't answer. I spoke slowly. "Did you think I would be the same as I've been for the past 3 years?" He looked up. "The past 3 years?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Did you really think I didn't know anything?" He froze. "What do you mean?" I stepped closer. "Did you think I didn't notice when you started to change? That I didn't see the late-night meetings suddenly multiplying? That I didn't see the unusual charges on the accounts? That I didn't see the way your eyes changed whenever I mentioned the words, 'coming home'?" He looked down, his fists clenching. I let out a soft breath. "I didn't know the details. I just chose to trust you." He looked up quickly. "You knew?" I shook my head. "I didn't know, but I felt it." He looked at me, bewildered. "Then why didn't you ask me?" I gave a humorless smile. "Because I thought you would tell me yourself." He fell silent. I turned away, took a few steps, then stopped. "David, do you remember the day we moved into the penthouse by the river?" He nodded. "What did you say that day?" I said it was our home. I nodded. "But at some point, you started treating it like it was just my home. When did you move your clothes out of our bedroom? When did you start taking longer and longer business trips? When did you stop having dinner with me?" He couldn't speak. I looked at him for a long time. "A marriage doesn't collapse in a day, David. It falls apart piece by piece." His voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Don't say that anymore." He asked quietly. "Then what do you want to hear?" "I want to hear the truth." "I've already told you." I shook my head. "You've only told me the parts I could see. When did you meet Jessica?" He hesitated. 3 years ago." "Who made the first move?" He didn't answer right away. "I did." I nodded. "Why?" He spoke very softly. "Because at that time, I felt like I wasn't the man in our marriage anymore." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" He said slowly. "I felt like you made all the decisions." I laughed. "Are you being honest, or are you just making excuses for yourself?" He didn't reply. "You weren't the man in our marriage?" I pressed. He gave a slight nod. I looked him square in the eye. "You are the coup of the company. Your name is on the deed to the penthouse. You drive a company car. You have the authority to sign multi-million-dollar contracts. And you're telling me you didn't feel like the man in this marriage? Or is it that you just wanted to be the man in a marriage where you didn't have to bear any responsibility?" He closed his eyes. "Maybe." I let out a long, slow breath. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me." He opened his eyes. "I was wrong." I nodded. "Yes, you were." He asked, "So what are you going to do now? Do you really want to know?" He nodded. I enunciated each word clearly. "I am going to have all of your personal accounts audited. I am going to work with my lawyers, and I am going to prepare the divorce papers." He froze. "Divorce?" I nodded. "Yes." He took a step back. "Catherine, is there anything else you want to say?" His voice trembled. "I don't want a divorce." I asked, "You don't want a divorce because of me? Or because of the assets?" He couldn't answer. I continued, "You can think about it and get back to me." He stepped forward. "Give me time." I shook my head. "You've already had 3 years." He looked at me as if all his strength had drained away. I turned and walked toward the hotel exit. Outside, dusk was falling. Streetlights were beginning to flicker on in long lines. I stopped for a moment and called Mark Chen. "Mark, please prepare the divorce filings." On the other end, he was silent for a few seconds. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he said quietly. "I understand." I hung up. This was no longer about holding on or letting go. This was about bringing things to a definitive end, and this time, I would end it my way. That evening, I didn't go back to the hotel right away. I walked alone along the Miami Riverwalk for a long time. The wind coming off the water was cool, but it helped clear my head. The city was brilliantly lit, the promenade bustling with people, just like any other night. Only my life had fundamentally changed. I never thought I would one day be the one filing for divorce from the man who had stood beside me at our wedding in front of hundreds of guests. But as I stood on the brightly lit bridge, I had a moment of pure clarity. The one who left wasn't me. The one who had left, long ago, was him. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Where are you?" "I'm taking a walk by the river," she asked softly. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've read the financial report Mark sent over. Are you really filing for divorce?" "Yes." She sighed very gently. "I won't try to stop you, but you need to be prepared for every possibility. David is not the type to let go easily." "I understand." She paused. "Make sure you keep all the evidence safe." "I will." I hung up and leaned against the railing, watching the city lights shimmer on the water's surface. I remembered the first business trip David and I took together. He was still a project manager then, and I had just started taking over a part of the family business. He stood beside me at the airport, clutching a file, and promised he would work hard so I would never be disappointed. I believed him then. But looking back, I realized some people are only good at making promises when they have no power. I returned to the hotel around 10 p.m. As I entered the lobby, the receptionist called out, "Miss Hayes?" "Yes?" "There's someone waiting for you." I turned toward the lounge area. Jessica was sitting there. She had changed her dress, but her face still bore the marks of a day spent crying and thinking. She stood up the moment she saw me. "You're back." I nodded. "Have you been waiting long?" "About an hour." "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you." I gestured to a table near the window. "Let's sit." We sat across from each other. This time there was no David between us. No charade of sister-in-law and sister. No polite smiles. Just two women who had emerged from the same lie. Jessica looked at me for a long time before speaking. "I'm sorry." I was a little surprised. "What are you sorry for?" "I didn't know he was married." I looked at her. "I know." She looked down. "If I had known, I never would have stayed with him for so long. I thought he was sincere with me." I asked, "Do you still believe that now?" She shook her head. "No." I watched her for a long moment. This was the first time I had seen her without the confident air she'd had the night before. The woman in front of me was no longer my rival. She was just someone who had realized she'd been deceived. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. I answered directly, "Divorce." She froze. "So quickly?" I nodded. "The longer it drags on, the more time it wastes." She was quiet for a moment. "He said he doesn't want a divorce." I smiled faintly. "He doesn't want to lose everything that comes with this marriage." She looked at me. "Do you still love him?" I thought for a second. "Not anymore." She exhaled. "I thought you would be in a lot of pain." I looked out the window. "There's pain, but pain doesn't mean you have to stay." She nodded very slowly. "I understand." I looked at her. "What about you?" She gave a sad smile. "I'm going to quit my job." I was surprised. "Because of him?" She shook her head. "Because I don't want to be entangled in your company's affairs anymore." I nodded. "That's a wise decision." She looked at me. "There's one more thing I need to tell you." He asked me to hold on to a file for him. I looked up. "What kind of file?" "A revised project cost estimate." I looked her straight in the eye. "Do you still have it?" "Yes." I was silent for a second. "Do you have it with you?" She nodded. "I do." She opened her purse, took out a thin folder, and placed it on the table. He told me to keep it, just in case. I stared at the folder for a long time. If this was the real revised estimate, it was the final piece of the puzzle I needed. I spoke slowly. "By giving me this, you're helping me." She looked down. "I don't want to keep making mistakes." I picked up the folder. "Thank you." She stood up. "I should go." I nodded. "I wish you well." She turned and walked away quickly. I watched her figure disappear from the lobby. In my hands, I held the final piece of evidence. I knew that from this moment on, my divorce would no longer be a simple separation. It would be a clear, decisive, and irreversible conclusion. I stood in the hotel lobby for a long time, holding the folder Jessica had given me. The paper wasn't thick, but it was heavy enough to end a marriage. I opened it right there at the table, reading through the lines of adjusted figures. A single glance was enough to know this was an internal estimate that should never have left the company. If this document ended up in a competitor's hands, there would be no more debate. David would face serious legal consequences. I closed the folder slowly. This was no longer just about me. This was about the corporation, about my family, and about my own integrity. I went straight up to my room. The moment I was inside, I called Mark. "Are you still awake?" He answered immediately. "I was waiting for your call. I've just received a copy of an internal revised project estimate." The line was silent for a second. "Where did you get it?" "From Jessica." He asked immediately. "Is it the original or a copy?" "The original." He spoke slowly. "Then that's everything we need." I thought so too. He continued. "Take photos and send them to me right now." I placed the folder on the desk, turned on a brighter light, and photographed each page, sending them to Mark. After I was done, I sat down. For the first time since arriving in Miami, I felt that things were finally moving in the direction I had planned. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" A deep male voice responded. "This is attorney Michael Vance. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. David Miller." I frowned slightly. "What does Mr. Miller need?" "We would like to discuss a potential settlement." I gave a faint laugh. That was fast. Mr. Vance was direct. "Mr. Miller hopes you will reconsider your decision to file for divorce." I asked, "Is that what he told you?" "Yes." I looked at the folder on my desk. "Please relay a message for me." "Of course." I enunciated each word clearly. If Mr. Miller wants to settle, he must first provide a full explanation for the unauthorized fund transfers and the leak of the confidential project estimate. Mr. Vance was silent for a few seconds. "Which estimate are you referring to?" I glanced down at the papers before me. "The revised cost estimate for the Austin project." His tone grew more somber. "You have that document?" I replied calmly. "I do." The atmosphere on the other end of the line shifted instantly. I could hear the faint rustle of papers. Mr. Vance spoke slowly. "I see. I will discuss this with Mr. Miller." I added, "And please give him one more message for me." "Yes? If he wants to talk, he should start by telling the truth." I hung up. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was David. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "I need to talk to you." "Go ahead." His voice was hoarse. "Where did you get that file?" "I thought you would know." He spoke urgently. "Catherine, this isn't as simple as you think." I asked, "How is it not simple?" He was quiet for a moment. "I just wanted to have some leverage." I laughed. "Leverage by selling internal documents." He spoke quickly. "I didn't sell it." "Then what were you planning to do with it? And why did you give it to Jessica to hold?" He sighed heavily. "I just asked her to keep it safe." I spoke slowly. "You asked her to keep safe a confidential corporate document." He was speechless. I looked out the window. "David, listen to me. Do you remember 3 years ago when you were promoted? You told me you would protect this company like you would protect our family. Is this how you protect it?" His voice was a broken whisper. "I was wrong." I nodded. "Yes, you were." He continued. "I'll fix it." I asked, "How will you fix it?" He was silent for a long time. I stated plainly, "I'm flying back to New York tomorrow." "For what?" "To file for divorce." He spoke urgently. "Catherine?" I didn't answer. I hung up. I sat back down and opened the folder again. Each number on the page was no longer just a figure. It was a confirmation that everything had gone too far to ever go back. Around 11 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I got up and opened it. David was standing outside. He looked at me for a long time. "Can I come in and talk?" I considered it for a moment, then stepped aside. He entered the room slowly, his eyes scanning the space before he sat down. He spoke quietly. "I never thought I'd be in this position." "What position?" I asked. "Facing me like this?" I looked at him. "You've been in this position for 3 years. It's just that today I'm finally standing on the other side." He looked at me. "Is there really no chance left for me?" I answered clearly. "No." He clenched his fists. I still want to try. I looked at him. Try what? He spoke softly. To save this marriage. I shook my head. You left this marriage a long time ago. He said nothing more. He stood up very slowly. I understand. I watched him go. When he reached the door, he paused. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't reply. The door clicked shut. I knew it was the last time he would say those words to me as my husband, and it was the last time I would hear them and feel nothing at all. The next morning, I left Miami on the earliest flight back to New York. As the plane took off, I looked down at the city below through the small window. My 3 days there felt short, yet they were long enough to completely change my life. I was no longer the woman who arrived with her husband for a business trip. I was leaving alone, and this time, with a decision that could not be changed. The moment I landed at JFK, a company car was waiting. Mark Chen was standing beside it. When he saw me emerge with my suitcase, he walked over quickly. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. He looked at me for a few seconds, then said quietly, I've prepared the documents. Already? He gave a small smile. I knew you wouldn't change your mind. I got into the car. It pulled away from the airport and merged into the bustling morning traffic of New York City. The city was the same as ever, only I was entering a new chapter. Mark handed me a thin folder. This is the divorce petition. I opened it and read through the clear, decisive language. There was no room for emotion, only law. He asked, Do you want to file today? I nodded. Today? He looked at me. I'll go with you this afternoon. I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window at the trees lining the highway, blurring past. I once thought divorce was a distant, abstract concept, but when it came time to do it, it felt more like signing a termination contract than ending a love story. The car stopped in front of the Summit Wellness headquarters. The receptionist greeted me with a respectful nod, as always. No one knew what I had been through in the last 3 days, but as I stepped into the private elevator to my floor, I knew that from today on, things would be different. As soon as I entered my office, my executive assistant was waiting. Miss Hayes, there's an internal leadership meeting at 9 a.m. I nodded. Prepare the materials for me. Yes, ma'am. She hesitated for a moment. Will Mr. Miller be attending? I replied calmly. No. She understood immediately. Understood. I walked into my private office. The room was unchanged, my desk neat, the bookshelves in their proper place, but the feeling was different. This was no longer just an office. It was the ground on which I had to stand firm. The internal phone line rang. It was my mother. You're back? Yes, she asked. Are you really filing this afternoon? Yes. She was quiet for a moment. I'll go with you, I said softly. Okay, she added. Whatever needs to be done, do it decisively. I understand. At exactly 9 a.m., the meeting began. I walked into the conference room. All the department heads were present. The atmosphere was different. Everyone knew about David's suspension, but no one asked any questions. I stood at the head of the table. Effective today, I will be taking direct oversight of the Austin project. A department head asked, Will Mr. Miller be returning? I answered curtly. No. No one asked anything further. All data related to the project must be re-audited within 3 days. Everyone responded in unison. Yes, Miss Hayes. The meeting concluded faster than usual. When everyone had left, Mark stayed behind. He said quietly, You handled that very well. I gave a faint smile. I'm just doing what needs to be done. He looked at me. 3 p.m. this afternoon. I nodded. 3 p.m. At exactly 3 p.m., my mother, Mark, and I walked into the county courthouse. The building was neither large nor grand, but it felt heavier than any boardroom I had ever entered. I held the folder tightly in my hand. My mother looked at me. Are you ready? I am. Mark said quietly, I'll wait out here. I nodded. I walked into the filing clerk's office. The clerk looked at me, then at the papers. Filing for divorce, correct? Correct. She reviewed each page carefully. Sign here, please. I took the pen. My hand didn't tremble. I signed my name, clearly and firmly. As I set the pen down, I knew I had just officially closed a part of my life. The clerk said, We will be in touch regarding the next steps in the legal process. I nodded. Thank you. I walked out of the office. My mother was waiting in the hall. Is it done? Yes. She took my hand gently. That's one step finished. I looked at my mother. Yes. We walked out of the courthouse together. The afternoon sun shone on the front steps. I paused for a moment, not out of regret, but because I knew that from this day forward, I was walking a different path. A path that no longer included him, but a path I had chosen for myself, and one I would see through to the end. 3 days after filing for divorce, I received the first official notice from the court, scheduling a preliminary hearing. I read the email in my office on a Monday morning. Outside the window, the New York sun was bright, its light hitting my desk and illuminating the documents before me. I stared at the words, "Mandatory Mediation Session," and felt a sense of complete calm. I knew this step was coming, and I knew my decision would not change. The internal phone line rang. My assistant's voice came through. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Miller is in the lobby. He says he needs to see you." I was silent for a moment. "Does he have an appointment?" "No, ma'am." I spoke slowly. "Send him up." "Yes, ma'am." I put the phone down. This was the first time David had set foot in the corporate headquarters since his suspension. I stood up and poured myself a glass of water, not out of nervousness, but to keep my mind sharp. The door opened. David walked in. He was wearing a gray dress shirt, no suit jacket. He looked thinner, the last few days having clearly taken their toll. The man who once strode into this office as COO now stood before me as a visitor. "Have a seat." He didn't sit. He spoke quietly. "I got the notice from the court." I nodded. So did I. He looked at me for a long time. "You're really not going to change your mind?" I answered directly, "No." He clenched his fists. "I want to talk to you before the mediation." "About what?" I asked. He sighed. "I want to save this marriage." I looked at him. "Save it? For what reason?" He paused. "Because I still have feelings for you." I stared him straight in the eye. "Do you remember the last time you said that to me?" He didn't answer. "I remember it very clearly. It was before you met Jessica." He looked down. "I was wrong." I nodded. "You've said that many times." He stepped closer. "I know you don't believe me." "It's not that I don't believe you," I replied. He looked at me. "Then what is it?" "It's that I don't need it anymore." He froze. I continued. "A woman only listens to those words when she still needs her husband's affection. I don't need it anymore." He was silent for a long time. He asked quietly, "Can you give me one more chance?" I looked at him. "How many more chances do you want? I've given you plenty over the last 3 years." He looked down. "I know." I returned to my desk, opened a drawer, and placed a folder in front of him. He looked down at it. "What is this?" "A summary of all your unauthorized fund transfers," I said. He didn't pick it up. "This is the recording of your call with our competitor." He still didn't move. "And this is the internal project estimate you leaked." He closed his eyes. I looked at him. "Do you think all of this will just disappear if I withdraw the divorce petition?" He opened his eyes. "I don't." I nodded. "Then you understand." He finally sat down, for the first time since entering the room. He spoke very softly. "I just want to keep my family." I looked at him. "A family isn't something you can just keep whenever you feel like it, David." He asked, "Then what am I to you?" I answered bluntly, "The man who used to be my husband. But that's all in the past." He fell silent. I continued, "You should prepare for the mediation session." He asked quietly, "What are you going to say?" "The truth." He didn't ask any more questions. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle, and said, "I still hope you'll change your mind." I didn't answer. The door clicked shut. I sat back down. In the hallway, his footsteps faded away. I knew the upcoming mediation would be a crucial step, not to salvage this marriage, but to formally end it. And this time, I would say everything that needed to be said. The day of the mediation at the courthouse arrived sooner than I expected. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I chose a simple cream-colored suit, tied my hair back neatly, and stood before the mirror for a few minutes, not to adjust my appearance, but to see myself clearly. The woman in the mirror was no longer the one who had stood beside David at our wedding 5 years ago. This was someone different, calmer, clearer, and more resolute. My mother was waiting for me in the living room. "Are you ready?" "I am." She looked at me for a long time. If you stand by your decision today, I will support you. I nodded. I know. The car took me to the courthouse at exactly 8 a.m. Mark was already waiting by the entrance. When he saw me get out of the car, he just gave a slight nod. No questions were needed. We walked inside together. The courthouse hallway was as crowded as ever, but for me, today was different. David was already in the waiting area, with his lawyer, Mr. Vance, beside him. He stood up the moment he saw me. "Catherine." I nodded. "You're early." He spoke quietly. "I wanted to talk one more time before we go in." I looked at him. "Go on." Mr. Vance stepped aside to give us privacy. David took a deep breath. "I know today might be the last chance." I didn't respond. He continued. "I've done a lot of thinking these past few days." I asked, "And what have you concluded?" He looked at me. "I want to resign from the company." I was slightly surprised. "Say that again." He spoke slowly. "I will resign from all my positions at Summit Wellness." I looked him straight in the eye. "And what is that supposed to accomplish?" He replied, "To show you that I am serious about making things right." I shook my head. "Your resignation won't make the past disappear, David." He went on. "I will also sign over all assets currently in my name to you." I looked at him. "Are you negotiating?" He shook his head. "No." He spoke very softly. "I just want to save this marriage." I was quiet for a few seconds, then said, "David, you still don't understand what the problem is." He was silent. I continued, "The problem isn't the company. It isn't the assets." He clenched his fists. "Then what is it?" I answered very clearly. "It's the trust." He looked down. "I know." I went on, "And once trust is gone, no amount of assets can buy it back." He said nothing more. A court officer opened the door to the mediation room. "Mr. Miller, Miss Hayes, we're ready for you." We walked inside. A table was set in the middle of the room, and we sat on opposite sides. The mediator looked at the file, then at us. "Have you both considered this carefully?" I answered first. "I have." David was silent for a moment. "I have." The mediator spoke slowly. "The court always encourages reconciliation if it is still possible." I looked straight ahead. "For us, it is no longer possible." David turned to look at me. "Catherine." I didn't look back. The mediator asked, "Mr. Miller, do you have any objections?" David said quietly, "I do not consent to the divorce." I looked at him. "On what grounds?" He was silent. The mediator asked again, "Do you have a legal basis for your objection?" He couldn't answer. I opened the folder I had brought with me and placed it on the table. "I would like to submit additional documents." The mediator took them. "What are these?" I stated clearly, "Evidence related to Mr. Miller's unauthorized fund transfers and the leaking of confidential company documents." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. David stared at the folder for a long time. The mediator quickly scanned a few pages, then asked, "Mr. Miller, do you have any response?" David said very quietly, "No." The mediator nodded. "The court takes note of this." I looked at him one last time in that room. There was no anger, no blame, only a very clear and distinct calm. The mediator continued, "If the parties cannot reach an agreement, the court will proceed to the next stage." I nodded. "Understood." David said nothing more. The mediation session ended after nearly 40 minutes. As I walked out of the room, I felt much lighter, not out of joy, but because everything was moving toward the conclusion I had chosen. David lingered behind me for a moment, then called out, "Catherine." I turned back. He spoke softly. "I've really lost you, haven't I?" I looked at him. "You lost me a long time ago." He stood there, silent. I turned and walked out of the courthouse hallway. The midday sun shone down on the front steps. I walked down them slowly, each step feeling like I was walking away from an old chapter of my life. And this time, I knew for certain that the next chapter would be my own. After the unsuccessful mediation, I returned to the penthouse by the river late that afternoon. It was the first time I had been back since filing for divorce. The private elevator opened directly into the foyer, as always. The view of the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows was as stunning as it was the day I moved in 5 years ago. But as I stepped inside, I knew one thing with certainty. This was no longer a home for two. I walked slowly through the living room. The cream-colored sofa was in its usual spot. The wedding portrait was still hanging on the wall. In the photo, David and I were standing side by side, smiling brightly. I stopped in front of it for a long time. I didn't take it down right away, not out of lingering affection, but because I wanted to look at it one last time. I remembered the day we hung it. David was on a stepladder, and I was below, holding it steady. "This is the most important picture in this house," he had said. I believed him then, but looking at it now, I understood that some things are important not because they last, but because they were once real. I went up to the master bedroom. The door was open. The right side of the large walk-in closet had been half empty for a long time. 3 years ago, David had said he needed a separate room to work late. I believed him, but in reality, that was when he had started to leave this room for good. I opened a drawer on my vanity. The wedding ring box was still there. I picked up the simple gold band, not overly expensive, but I had worn it for 5 years. I slipped it off my finger one last time and placed it back in the box. There was no hesitation, no regret. My phone rang. It was my mother. "You're home?" "Yes," she asked gently. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." She was quiet for a moment. "I just received the official court date for the final hearing." "When is it?" 2 weeks from today." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Okay," she added. "Prepare yourself." I've been prepared for a long time. I hung up and went back to the living room. I stood before the wedding portrait again. This time, I walked over and gently lifted the frame off the wall. I placed it in a cardboard box I had prepared earlier. I didn't tear it, didn't throw it away. I just put it away. I sat in the living room for a long time that evening, remembering moments from the past 5 years. Not to feel regret, but to find closure. Around 7 p.m., the doorbell chimed. I went to answer it. David was standing there. He looked at me for a long time. "Can I come in?" I thought for a second, then nodded. He stepped into the living room, his eyes scanning the space. His gaze stopped at the empty spot on the wall where the portrait used to be. He spoke quietly. "You took it down." I nodded. He was silent for a long time. I just wanted to see the place one last time. I said nothing. He walked slowly around the room, touching the back of the sofa, looking out at the city lights, then turned back to face me. He asked, "Is there really nothing you want to keep?" I replied very softly, "No." He looked at me. "I thought you would at least keep our home," I said clearly. "This is my home." He looked down. "I know." I looked at him. "Is there anything else?" He was quiet for a second, then said, "I've signed all the property transfer documents over to my lawyer." I nodded. "I know." He looked at me. "I just want you to know I'm not going to fight you on anything." I spoke slowly. "This is no longer a fight." He asked, "Then what is it?" "An ending." He stood there for a long time, then took a key from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. "The key to the penthouse," he said. "I'm giving it back to you." I nodded. "Thank you." He looked at me one last time. He spoke quietly. "If I could go back, I wouldn't have done it." I looked at him. "But we can't go back, David." He nodded very slowly. "I know." He turned and walked to the door. With his hand on the handle, he paused for a second. "I hope you find happiness, Catherine." I replied, "You too." The door closed. I stood in the living room for a long time. The penthouse was empty, but for the first time in years, it truly felt like it was mine. 2 weeks later, the final hearing took place as scheduled. I went to the courthouse with my mother and Mark. The proceedings were quicker than I expected. When the judge read the final decree, officially granting the divorce, I heard every word clearly. There was no sense of loss, only release. As I walked out of the courthouse, I paused on the steps. The morning sun was gentle. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I knew I was truly stepping into a new life. I turned to my mother. "It's over." She squeezed my hand. "Yes." Mark stood beside me, smiling faintly. "Congratulations, Catherine." I looked at him. "Thank you, Mark." We walked down the courthouse steps together. Ahead was a busy street, full of people, but this time I no longer felt lost. I knew I was heading in the right direction. This is a story about a courageous woman's journey of leaving a marriage devoid of trust to rediscover her self-worth and build a new life. Through this narrative, listeners can recognize that strength, clarity, and self-respect are the keys to overcoming turmoil in marriage and in life. When one door closes, another will open, if we are brave enough to keep walking. The positive takeaways from this story are intended to help the audience lead happier, more joyful lives, to cherish one's own self-worth and refuse to live in prolonged pain, to understand that trust is the most critical foundation of a marriage, to have the courage to face the truth instead of avoiding it, to maintain composure when making major life decisions, to always be prepared with financial and emotional independence, to learn to forgive the past in order to move forward, to appreciate family and those who stand by you during difficult times, to believe that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger.